Hi, welcome back to the basement. I'm Steve Lewis, and today we're continuing our look at some of the great information and insights that have come in through the comments section over the last sort of month or two. Let's jump into it right away with episode 102, where we discussed the Flame album, and specifically the track Another Day Like Heaven, which was the album's big production, longest track at 5 minutes and 41 seconds, and second single. And I said on that episode that I had noticed that the single version was a 3 minute and 46 second edit of the album track. There are three distinct sections to the song, and I wondered what they edited to carve nearly 2 minutes out of its running time. I wasn't able to find a copy of it online, so I went ahead and picked up a copy of the single. All three sections are there. The first and most melodic section seems to be the same. The next section, with the insistent refrain, "It's a long road, it's a long road," with electric guitar, has been significantly shortened, but it's still followed by the explosion. The final coda, "It's a long, long road to heaven today," runs 2 minutes on the album, almost Hey Jude style. This part has really been cut, turning it into little more than a tag during the fade out. Personally, I think shortening the second section actually works better. It's jarring and threatens to become monotonous. But shortening the coda definitely weakens it and changes the character of the record. Imagine if Hey Jude had started to do a quick fade just as they got to the na 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 part. It would change the feeling of the song, and it's almost the same effect here. Anyway, mystery solved on what they carved out of Another Day Like Heaven to shorten it by 2 minutes. On the next episode, 103, U.S. Pop Culture 1978 Part 1, we talked about the Beach Boys' reportedly disastrous tour of Australia and New Zealand early in the year. Peter Flegg was actually there and saw the shows in Perth in March of 1978. Peter says the first show was terrible, with Carl falling over on stage, long gaps in the show with none of the Beach Boys members on stage, and several hundred people demanding their money back. The show received a lot of media coverage, and Carl offered a televised apology the next day. Peter says the following shows were fine, but the damage was done, and that first show really hurt the Beach Boys' reputation. You should check out his full comments on the episode. And thanks, Peter, for that feedback. It is really great to have a first-hand account. After I finished episode 104, U.S. Pop Culture Part 2, I realized I had missed a great opportunity to show this Bananas magazine, which is from that era and is Beach Boys related. So let's, if you will indulge me, return to those thrilling days of 1978, just briefly, one more time. Bananas was a magazine for late elementary and middle school kids and was published by Scholastic magazines. Kids could subscribe and issues would be delivered to them at school. Bananas editor Bob Stein would go on to fame in the 90s as the author of the popular Goosebumps book series under the name R.L. Stein. There's no date on this issue, number 20 from 1978, but it says it's the last one they'll get before school gets out, so it's probably from around May or June of the year. It's got a lot of articles, cartoons, and jokes centered around nature, school, and pop culture. There's a Star Wars joke book with such classic knee slappers as, "Why do droids hum? They can't remember the words." Or, "Why did all the other space pilots quit the space pilots choir? They wanted to hear Han Solo." Featured articles include John Travolta, A Sweat Hog Grows Up, discussing how Travolta had transitioned from playing Vinnie Barbarino on Welcome Back, Kotter to movie stardom with Saturday Night Fever. The issue also included a mini poster centerfold from Saturday Night Fever. There was a cover story on the outrageous satire Saturday Night Live, and the reason I picked it up is this 2-page flashback on the history of the Beach Boys. It's a pretty good summary of their careers to that point and addresses Brian's problems with surprising candor. As a fan, you certainly won't learn anything new here, but it would have been a nice introduction to the band for elementary and middle school kids in 1978. The article concludes in part that the Beach Boys are back in the studio working on new material and filled with hope for the future. Elsewhere in the issue, we get the checkout counter, where you can check out the latest fads and finds and get advice on your clothes and the way you look with Carol Clark. Paulette J. from Dayton, Ohio asks, "Dear Carol, what styles of clothing will be popular this summer?" Carol answers in part, "Look for clothes to be soft, big, and loose. Big skirts and shirts in gauze are going to be popular, especially with socks rolled to the ankle. Pale colors will be very in. Peach, yellow, and blue will be big. Look for belts made of rope and straw. Punk styles may start to catch on in some areas. Watch for trash can pocketbooks, aluminum garbage pails with lids strung on cotton cords. I wasn't living in the most cutting-edge area for fashion in 1978, and I don't know what it was like in Dayton, Ohio, but I really hope Paulette didn't show up for the first day of school in September in a loose-fitting blue and peach gauze shirt, a straw belt with her socks rolled to her ankles, and a trash can slung over her back. The inside back cover announces the winners of a contest from issue number 16. Each of them received a copy of Wings Over America. That page also contains celebrity gossip from K. Pasa. Apparently, Henry Winkler was hopping mad at Bowser from Sha Na Na for having said that Winkler's performance as Fonzie was a fraud because tough guys were never nice to the straight kids. Sean Cassidy had been mobbed by fans while shopping in Beverly Hills. Christy McNichol of TV's Family and Willie Ames of Eight Is Enough had found true love together while on a yacht trip. Wacko comedian Steve Martin had just signed a long-term contract with NBC and would be doing a bunch of specials, and Kate Jackson's motorcycle accident was nothing serious, just some bruises. So there you have it. If you're ever transported to a middle school in the spring of 1978, you'll be right up to date. Viewer Ranger Girl remembered the sister publication of Bananas magazine, Scholastic's Dynamite magazine. Dynamite had started publication in 1974, and its phenomenal success had inspired Scholastic to launch more magazines in the same vein. In addition to Dynamite and Bananas, they eventually had Wow, Hot Dog, and Peanut Butter magazines. In particular, Ranger Girl remembered the October 1978 issue of Dynamite, which asked the timely musical question, the Bee Gees versus the Beatles. Who's the greatest? Thanks for pointing out that blast from the past, Ranger Girl. On the next episode, 105 U.S. Pop Culture 1978 Part 3, Joel Goldenberg noted that Earth, Wind & Fire's single Got to Get You Into My Life does not mention From the Sgt. Pepper soundtrack anywhere on its label. I can only guess why they might not have wanted their single too closely associated with the Bee Gees' Peter Frampton movie. On the next episode concerning the M.I.U. album, Joel also pointed out that there are different production credits for both sides of the Peggy Sue single from the way it's credited on the album. On the album, everything is credited to produced by Al Jardine and Ron Altbach, executive producer Brian Wilson. On the single, the A-side, Peggy Sue, is shown as produced by the Beach Boys, and the B-side, Hey Little Tomboy, is shown as produced by Brian Wilson. The tracks are identical, and I have no idea why the credit should be different. I guess that it probably has something to do with the long gestation that both songs went through before they were released. Also, the single came out about a month before the album, so it may have been pressed before they had settled on a final production credit for the M.I.U. album. Speaking of tracks that are different, we talked about how the first CD release of the M.I.U. album in 1991 contained alternate versions of 4 songs: Come Go With Me, Peggy Sue, Pitter Patter, and Winds of Change. Michael Lukens and Frank Juster both pointed out that the different take of Come Go With Me is also on the 1991 CD version of 10 Years of Harmony. The M.I.U. version is on the original release from 1981, so presumably they were putting together the CDs for this and M.I.U. at the same time, used the same tape, so the alternate version of Come Go With Me ended up here too. Michael Lukens also says that he recently ordered a copy of M.I.U. on CD. The version he received has the alternate of 3 of the songs, but the original M.I.U. version of Pitter Patter. That would explain why some sources I've read say that there are 3 alternate versions on the M.I.U. CD. The alternate version of Pitter Patter opens with rain effects, which makes it really easy to spot on that 1991 release. Also talking about the M.I.U. album, regarding Kona Coast, I asked if anybody knew what the word Wahawali's in the lyrics meant. Google searching it only brought up the lyrics for Kona Coast. Willie from Minix Music responded that he thinks they're probably singing the Howleys, meaning somebody who is not native Hawaiian. I think he's probably right, and that Wahawali's is just somebody doing a sloppy job transcribing the lyrics on the inner sleeve of the album. I probably should have figured it was a mistake, since the word Mecca in the next line is transcribed as meta, and as discussed earlier, the lyrics to Hey Little Tomboy are just rough notes after the first 7 lines. I certainly hope they didn't pay too much to whoever they hired to write out those lyrics for the album cover. Also talking about M.I.U., Robert Zastro suggested that it might have been a good idea for the Beach Boys to begin using outside writers occasionally. And oddly, I had never really thought about that before. Of course, we were used to them covering oldies by this point in their career to fill out an album, but it would have been interesting if they had tried using some more contemporary music. And it raised the question, what contemporary songs would you have liked to have heard on the M.I.U. album covered by the Beach Boys? What came to mind for me was Lovely Day by Bill Withers. I would love to have heard a Beach Boy version of that. And what other contemporary songs would it be cool to hear a Beach Boy version of? It doesn't have to be the M.I.U. album, any of their later albums. What songs would you love to hear a Beach Boy version of? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Obviously, we have a lot more to get to here. I know I mentioned back in December that Sheila Torres had suggested a deep dive into the year 1969. I really want to do that, but as I looked at it, I thought it might be better to start with 1968 and the Friends album and then follow up with 1969. So I'm thinking we'll start a deep dive into 1968 sort of around Memorial Day. John Schreiber suggested a episode on Orange Crate art, which I definitely want to get to. I still want to do a part 2 and probably a part 3 and part 4 on Jan and Dean. I really want to get to that. I'm also thinking about following up our deep dive into 1971 and the Surf's Up album later in the year with 1972 and Carl and the Passions. That ought to be a lot of fun. And based on the feedback, I would also like to do a non-Beach Boys episode sometime about Elton John's Ego single and the Single Man album from 1978. So I want to thank everybody very much for all the great comments. This is really what makes it worthwhile to me. There's been so much great information, so much great feedback, always hearing great stuff. I want to particularly thank the good folks at the fantastic Beach Boys 101 Facebook page for the very nice write-up that they gave this channel. I really appreciated that, and I think I will make some really nice connections and some people that will bring some more really good information to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. If I didn't get to your comment, don't take it in any way that I didn't appreciate it. There's just only so much that I can get to or that lends itself to this kind of a discussion. But please keep the comments coming. Please hit like and subscribe on this if you haven't done that. And I will see you next time. Thanks again. Bye.